What's up, Steve? I appreciate you, brother. Always keeping it funky in the stash. And I appreciate you guys for hanging out with us live as well. Stash Nation, doing our best to leave you a little bit better than how we found you with some local people. Talk about some cool local stuff. And fitting that bill today, we got Mark Lesicka, owner of Float Spa San Diego. Have you heard about Float? Has it kind of popped in around your reticular activator, sort of bouncing around? Oh, you saw it maybe on your Facebook feed. Maybe one of your friends has done it. The early adopters out there who love going and talking about the thing that they did or whatever. That's similar, I guess, maybe to my experience in the sense that I had heard about Float from Joe Rogan and heard it from enough about how transformative it was for him. I'm like, I got to check this out. So I went online. I found Mark over at floatspasandiego.com, went and checked it out for myself. So we got Mark in the studio to talk a little bit how Float Spa can help you. So, Mark, you mentioned sleep study. You mentioned the Army peeps and the Navy SEALs and the Marines all being like some of your, chief clientele. So maybe allow us to kind of inside the level 2 or the 3 element of that conversation. So let's get deep with it. So first of all, let's do the sleep study thing. Help us out with that.
Well, for years I knew that something was changing in me because it seemed like I needed less and less sleep. And recently, one of my clients wanted to come down and see my facility and work with me in his a sleep center up in the Del Mar area. Asked me to come up and go through their facility. So I went and did a sleep study with them.
Okay.
And, it's an overnight stay. You got more wires hooked up to you than you have in your home.
Sounds comfortable.
Yeah, it's amazing. But believe it or not, I fell asleep. And what was really amazing, when I went back to meet with they have one of the top neurologists there. He was looking at my sleep study and just blown away by the 3 levels of sleep that we enter, the light, the deep, and the REM sleep.
Okay.
I was literally 32.8, 32.2, and 33, whatever it was just almost one-third.
Really?
And he just was explaining to me that typically it's 20, 50, 30. You spend most of your time in deep sleep, and in the morning your rapid eye movement is maybe 20% of your sleep. A lot of people are in those studies are typically 5 or 10% because they're not getting great sleep. And one of the things...
So that's like a gear system, right? Like you're kind of in first, second, then you're third and fourth most of the time. And if you're lucky, you get down to the 5th where the magic happens. That's REM.
Exactly. REM sleep's where, you're really processing things. In fact, people with PTSD, they'll do a technique called EMDR, which is eye movement desensitization... I can't even remember the R, but reprogramming.
Reprogramming.
And so what happens is they use that to go in and access and correct these traumas. We should be doing that in our sleep. So the longer you hang out there, the more you're going to process. So I think over the years, just floating has conditioned my brain to spend more time in REM, and which then at that point your body's recovered. You have more energy when you wake up. You need less sleep. My 5 hours is probably equivalent to somebody's 8. Because I hang out in REM sleep a lot longer.
Because you've been floating.
Because of the regular floating.
How long have you been floating?
Oh, gosh. My first float was back in 97. I was in a head-on motorcycle accident at 70 miles an hour, and some people say the only thing that saved me was landing on my head, but did a lot of damage. I broke some teeth, folded my legs forward, injured my lower back, my neck, and they did surgery on my knees, wanted to keep cutting on my back and neck, and I said no way, so I tried everything else. Acupuncture, massage, you name it. If somebody suggested it and it wasn't going to cut me open, I gave it a whirl.
Okay.
And then one day I came across floating. And
in 97?
In 97, a guy had one here in his home. Yeah, it was kind of weird. He was trying to just pay for the bill on the electricity and the salt, so he ran an ad in Vision magazine, and I responded.
Wow.
Got to his house, thought that was a little weird, but I don't know if anybody on hearing this today has been in pain, but when you're in pain, you'll do just about anything. And so I gave it a whirl, and I noticed that the numbness in my hands and my feet started going away, and session after session, I just started to feel a whole lot better. I noticed my focus was vastly increased. I went from feeling ADD all day long to, getting back to normal. So moved out of the area, and years later, I decided this works, so let's open one, and that's what got me into the business.
That's amazing, man. I don't know why I would have known that, but that is a remarkable way of getting there. Like, you would imagine that an entrepreneur, savvy entrepreneur, kind of catching in the wave on something as early as possible, has a couple bucks or has access to a couple bucks and then gets themselves in this conversation. Not true for you. You've been doing this since 97.
Oh, no, I floated since 97 and started the business in 08.
No, I understand that, but I'm saying
exactly.
I didn't even know floating was around in 97.
Oh, actually, it dates back to 56. It's something that didn't really catch on just because of the funkiness of the apparatus, but No, the AMA, the American Psychiatric Association, hired this guy, Dr. John C. Lilly, and he's the inventor of the original tank in '56.
Wow.
And they found that it is a natural way to shut down the mind and get the mind-body connection and shut down the brain in the process.
Mark, leaving us all a little better than how you found, man. I got to be honest, I had no clue. I thought this was kind of a relatively new thing. It just popped into my awareness recently.
Yeah, it's really it's really taken off. You're seeing them open up all over the world, and we're seeing people that just they call us all the time wanting to open centers. They floated, they loved it, and then you've got them, Colorado, Chicago, New York. They're kind of going in all over.
It's remarkable that it's been around since the '56, and it took so long to catch a blaze.
Amazing.
Yeah. But I don't want to get too far off track, man. That just literally stopped me. I wasn't expecting you to say that. So in my experience in floating, it's that turning off of the conscious mind. It's like in the evolution of anything, like if you're learning something, and I think this is a good metaphor for this, you start off as a unconscious incompetent, right? So you're incompetent, you don't even know you're incompetent. And then you become aware of it, and you move to conscious incompetence. Then you focus on it, you get rid of your incompetence, but you're still having to think about it. It's conscious competence. And then you're lucky if you ever move to the final stage, which is unconscious competence. You're good at it, you don't have to think about it, right? So this is an interesting thing because it's about training, right? And you can equivocate this a lot to the way that people talk about, the stoic elements, or we talked about meditation earlier is a good metaphor. It's like you're trying. It's not, you're not supposed to try. It's like It's such an internal conflict. But the floating thing allows you, it's sort of like a hyperspeed button. If we can pull back maybe some references to the 80s right now, right? It's like you get in there, you shut the door, and you're out. Like the conscious part, doesn't really have a lot to say about the matter. It's dark. It's sensory deprivation. You get in there and you don't experience gravity, which is like, how often do you not experience gravity, right? You always have gravity turned on. And so it's like, it's weird. Like I remember being there at some point in time, I wanted to touch the wall just to make sure that I still had, that whole touch thing going on because I was totally out. And then something magical happens as soon as the conscious element decides to give way. And then the unfolding process begins, and then you open yourself up into some amazing possibilities. And that's what I'm imagining is where you're saying the real lifting begins. So the training element of it, like you said, that you're now like a great sleeper because of that, it's that what happens after you turn the conscious part off. So are you to a point now where when you get into the tank, you can get to that pretty quickly, and then the rest is all benefit, basically?
Yeah, that comes, I think Joe Rogan talks about this on one of his YouTube videos where, floating is kind of like looking at an onion. When you first get in for the first time, it's peeling that hard outer shell off.
Right.
That skin, getting through it's kind of difficult.
The part you don't want to eat.
The part you don't want to eat, and it's just not easy. Right. But the closer you get to the center, the softer it is, the easier it is to deal with. And he talks about floating, getting the first float's that outer layer. A lot of people quit there. Because they get in, they wrestle with the floating for 45, 50 minutes, and it just becomes very challenging. But sometimes it's a second or third float for some people where they go deep and they start peeling off. I think one of the things I love that he says is you get in there and you got to learn to let go. But as soon as you think you've let go, now you got to let go of the letting go and let go of when you thought you were letting go. And then the minute you think you let go, you got to let go of that. And it's really what it's all about. And we live in this world that, especially in America today. I've traveled a lot, and I'm sure a lot of people listening today have been to other places or read about third world countries where they let go because they have to. Right. But we want to hang on. We want to be in control. Traveling to some of those places, they look at us like we're a bunch of nuts because we're control freaks. Yep. And, I'll put myself right up there on, number one. I want to control my environment, my circumstances, and where I'm going and everything else. And a lot of times it's just a joke. You get in the tank, and that stuff starts to all make sense. And I think that's why Joe Rogan's gone so far, done so much. You look at his career path. That guy's been Fear Factor commentator, UFC, MMA, comedian. As you said earlier, one of the most
he did news radio.
News radio, because he has learned to let go and let it happen. Yeah. And that's where the magic happens. And in the tank, we get people to come out and sit in our lobby. One guy comes out, sits in the lobby. He's a programmer for software, his own company. Spent 30 minutes, and he said, man, something you said on the way in just jolted me in the tank, and I just completely let go of my thinking. I've been stuck for 2 months on this software program, and he wrote the entire coding in my lobby. It just flowed to him. And he said, I just been such a control freak over this whole thing. Getting in the tank allowed me to free up my thinking and get on with it. He said it probably saved him 6 months of work.
Well, how, and what I'm hearing you say, if I could synthesize it maybe in a couple different words, is if you could look at your life right now, and I'm not saying to judge it, right? Because, we are where we are, and we got to appreciate what course it took us all to get to where we are. But what got us here is rarely what's going to take us there, And the challenge is not the resources. We have all the resources in the world. It's us getting in the way of ourselves.
Exactly.
So what kind of system do you have installed for your life that helps you get out of the way of yourself? And for some people, they're connected. They can go down and sit inside of a little cushy pillow and over on the beach, and they tune out and they're good. But for the rest of us, that's very difficult to do. So it's almost like we need a little cheat, do we not? Is floating kind of almost like a little cheat? Let's be honest, man.
Here's the thing. I started my my first little entrepreneurial venture when I was 13. And, as I grew up and had some real brick and mortar stuff at a young age, this is probably my 20th startup. And so, as you can tell, very ADD, moving one thing to the next. Floating is probably the first thing that has come along that's centered me, grounded me. And then, I gave everything else up. I got rid of 2 other companies 3 years ago because I would listen to the people in the lobby and just hear the stories of the transformation, people from the Marines, Army, Navy SEALs, that have been through some pretty rough times, and to tell me what floating did for them or somebody's career change. I had a guy that literally doubled his income, and he was just so stressed out all the time. And this guy went in and started floating, and he just tells me the story of what happened by calming down and how he got promoted. Because his boss said, one thing I was always concerned about is you just felt like you were overloaded all the time. No different skill set. He didn't take any more training. He just learned to master that, little 6-inch piece of real estate that between our ears. Yeah. Made all the difference in the world.
And there's a theme in there which runs, I hope, through the course of the rest of our half hour together, Mark, but definitely through the course of my life, which is it's not always about the doing, is it?
No.
Sometimes it's about stopping the things that are patterns or choices or programs that are interrupting where it is that we belong, and so that is what I heard kind of through that story, almost like a transparency. Is it's rarely in the doing; it's normally in the letting go.
Exactly, and I think I heard this Japanese guy at a presentation once make a comment. He says a lot of people think we're humans doing, but we're really humans being.
Yeah. And
when we're there and we're just allowing things to fall into place instead of forcing them into place, it's a whole different world.
I'm fired up, Mark. This is so cool, man. Thank you so much for hanging out live in the Stash with us today. Stash Nation, Mark leaving us a little better than how he found us with Float Spa San Diego, talking about how Float Spa can help you. We got into the sleep study, you betcha. Kind of tickled in the concept of who the Army, Navy SEAL, Marine guys, I'm sure we'll get a little bit more into the belly of the beast. But coming up, man, I'm a neuroscience dork nut, and I love where we're going to go next. We're going to talk about where the brain goes during float right here on Real Talk Radio San Diego, gang. We'll be right back.